listening to the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN. Here is Femi Abebefe.
Welcome to another edition of the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN. I'm your host, Femi Abebefe. As always, make sure to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. Our producer, Elliot Bowman, with us on the ones and twos. Michael, I hope you enjoyed your Father's Day weekend. I know a lot of us watching the U.S. Open here as we get a nice little sports afternoon. And boy, it was a dramatic finish with Bryson DeChambeau. Does the complete 180, now fan favorite, and he caps it off with a second U.S. Open title.
I didn't see that coming. I didn't see him having that fan favorite thing, but I think this is going to be an interesting for Rory McIlroy, how he recovers from this, the mental toughness that's going to be required. You know, when you stand over 2 3-footers at the, you want to be, this is the difference between good and great, right? I think that, Tiger would have made both putts. You and I both know that, right?
Yeah.
When you're on that other level, you make those. You handle the pressure of the moment, and nothing comes in it. I think he's going to have a real strategy for how he's going to move forward because, he ran off the golf course. He didn't want to face the media afterwards. He was embarrassed, and understandably so. But, if you don't run to the roar, if you don't run towards it, you're going to have a hard time overcoming it. It's going to creep up on you. And he did it early in his career. Remember the Masters that he was leading, that he started shanking the ball all over? And then he came back and he won some tournaments. But this one, to me, he was the better golfer on the day. I mean, how do you win a U.S. Open? You can't barely hit a fairway. What nobody said, I didn't have the broadcast very loud, but it was interesting. Had they played at a traditional open course, DeChambeau would have been plus 12. I mean, because he would have never been able to advance the ball out of the rough, right? I mean, he got a break playing in that fescue, or whatever they want to call it. And so, Rory was driving it in the right spot, but, you got to close it out. It's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out and how he recovers.
Yeah, Bryson was scrambling his ass off. And shout out to our guy, Elliot, who went ahead and won some coin on Bryson DeChambeau winning the U.S. Open. So we like that little money in the pocket for our guy, Elliot, here. But I'm with you on Rory McIlroy. I mean, I had no rooting interest. I didn't have any money involved. I was just watching it and hoping for drama. And I was hoping, honestly, that we'd get the playoff. I was hoping we'd get the playoff of Bryson and Rory. I think in a 3-hole aggregate, that would have been a lot of fun. But just watching those putts, I mean, goodness gracious. I mean, it's sometimes the pressure just gets to be a lot. And Rory is a guy who has not won a major in quite some time. He's won tournaments, like the smaller tournaments, he's won those ones. But the majors, that's where everyone keeps saying, hey, when's Rory going to end this drought? He hasn't won a major in a decade now. And he had it there right there. If he just goes par to finish, he wins the U.S. Open. But unfortunately, he couldn't do that, drops those 2 shots. Yeah.
2 strokes, and he hadn't 3-putt the whole tournament. I mean, to me, that's the one where you're going to have to really do a lot of work to get over it, because I don't care what you tell me, those are going to creep up back to you. I think it's a little bit like the 13 seconds in Buffalo. I think, to me, I think what Buffalo's their mantra is playoff bound. I mean, that's what they're talking about. Well, of course you should be playoff bound. You have Josh Allen. I mean, you're going to have to face those 13 seconds at some point in your life. I don't know if that's the reason, but I think, to me, you got to run to the roar. It's like they say all the time about lions, right? The oldest lion has the loudest roar. The oldest lion who can't really hunt anymore just roars. So people run away from the lion and right into the trap that the lion set with all the young lions, So run to the roar. You got to run to it. You can't run away from it. If you run away from it, you're going to get killed.
Yeah, you're going to get to the other hungry lions that are after you and are very spry. But yeah, the U.S. Open, it brought some great drama in the sports world. We obviously have the NBA Finals later on tonight. We'll see if this thing wraps up in Boston as they leave 3-1 against the Dallas Mavericks. But we'll keep our eyes on what's going on in the rest of the sports world. But in the NFL world, over the weekend, we saw the big contract extension for one Trevor Lawrence. This came out Thursday afternoon after we had taped our podcast. But it's a big deal. 5 years, $275 million, $142 million guaranteed at signing. And I was looking at the percentages over the weekend, and we talked about this a little bit on our VSiN show, the Lombardi line. But Lawrence, 6.2% of the cap next year, 8.2 in 26, 11.1 in 27, and 14 in 28. Is this a deal that you would have done if you were Trent Baalke? And can they manage around this, even though Lawrence, from an annual average standpoint, is now the second highest, or rather tied for highest paid with Joe Burrow?
I think it is a manageable number. Look, I mean, what are you going to do? He's played 3 years. You throw away his rookie year with Urban Meyer. I don't think, I know there's a perception that he's played better with Doug Peterson, but I don't think that's really accurate. 7-1 is his best year in terms of yards per field down the field. When you look at it too, I mean, he's turned the ball over 55 times in his career, 35 interceptions, 20 fumbles, and he's going to have to find a way to work the ball down the field. I think the pressure's on Peterson now to really deliver, because for all the conversation that he's improved since Urban, everybody's going to improve since that bad, horrible season. But there is pressure on him to protect the football, play smart, and he's always run the ball a little bit. That's been his saving grace. Not that he has a lot of average per, but his movement has always been at Clemson was tough. But I just think, to me, it's a contract they had to do, because what's the alternative? But to me, if you're Baalke, you're saying, I'm counting on Doug to get this right. Now, let's go back in time here for a second. So, the two finalists for the Jacksonville job were Byron Leftwich and Doug Peterson. They offer the job to Leftwich, okay? He says, I'm only taking the job if Adrian Wilson is my general manager. I don't want to work with Baalke, okay? Then there's actually picketers in front of the Jacksonville offices complaining about Baalke, right? And maybe there were 3 or 4. Who knows? Who cares, right? Everybody's going to complain about something. So the owner stays the course. He says, okay, you don't want to work with him? All right, we'll hire our second choice, which is Peterson. And they hire Peterson. Now they make it so that Leftwich turns the job. He goes on to Tampa as the OC. And now he's not even working in football. All right. And now Peterson comes in and has that initial spike, come back win from behind against Kansas City. Things are turning, beginning of the season, really well. So they're going to have to figure out how in the hell they can get him from stop turning the ball. 20 fumbles in 48 starts, Femi. 20 fumbles in 48, 35 interceptions. And they're going to have to figure out how to protect the ball better. Now, they'll tell you some of the interceptions were bounces off. I get all that. I understand that. They're not all on him. But they're going to have to figure out how they can manage him correctly, because the contract's affordable in the sense of percentages, but the team's going to have to come through for him.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. 39 career interceptions, 17 in his rookie year when Urban Meyer was there, 8 in his second year, 14 last year. And I guess last year you could sort of not give him a pass, but add a little bit of context of he was dealing with the injury. We spoke with Mia O'Brien yesterday on the Lombardi line of 1010XL, and it's like you forget that he didn't really practice that much given the high ankle sprain that he was playing through. He had some other injuries as well, but point blank is he's got to play better, because now they're paying him at that elite level. But I do think one of the reasons why they probably wanted to get this done early was to keep that percentage down. I think that's like the big thing. The underlying headline here is that, okay, they did pay him a lot, but they could still work around this. He's not in that Deshaun Watson, Dak Prescott, Daniel Jones territory.
That's exactly right. And that's where you get really in trouble. And look, one of the rules is you can't have more than 6 guys making the bulk of the money, right? And so if you can get the percentages on quarterbacks lower, now eventually, when that cap goes up year 3, when he's at 14%, that's still the highest, that won't be that high. I mean, Mahomes was at 17% last year. Now, Mahomes is a better player. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to explain that. But I think the reality here is you have to find a way to manage these things correctly and build your team. See, Jacksonville under Baalke is a size, speed team completely. They are, the reason they don't take Hutchinson over Walker is because Walker is a size, speed deluxe. Hutchinson was a better collegiate player, but Baalke's from the school of size, speed. And we're going to get the production out of him, which is a school I've been in most of my career too, which is the Al Davis school, right? Take the bigger, faster guy, you're going to win. I just think they got to do a better job of blending the team around what this quarterback can do effectively. And, they're going to be with Evan Ingram as one of your tight ends. You're not going to be able to really have a power run game. And I think that's something they really need in Jacksonville. This is a big year for them. They're going into a new stadium, right? An expensive stadium that's going to cost taxpayers money. they better deliver a product that's worthy of it.
Oh, 100%, 100%. And right now they're the second choice to win the AFC South, well behind the Houston Texans, who are like almost an even money favorite to win that division after they won it last year in year one under DeMeco Ryans and CJ Stroud. Before we get out of here, though, I do want to bring up the news that we got. We'll have time to talk about who's next, like the Tuas, the Jordan Loves, the Dax. We can talk about that all throughout the course of this offseason, barring some breaking news that happens between now and when we tape next. But Tee Higgins, he shows up at Cincinnati Bengals, didn't go to the mandatory mini camp, but now has signed the franchise tag tender, meaning that he has to go to training camp. But I mean, this is well played by Tee Higgins to avoid these fines.
Right. We avoid the fines, so he doesn't have to come. But now he's got fully guaranteed for injury and skill, so he's in good shape. But if he had signed it back in April, he's got to come to the mandatory stuff. He didn't have to come to the voluntary, but he has to come to the mandatory stuff. Going back to who's going to sign next, somebody wrote in the comments, and I think it was really perceptive of him, is Matthew Stafford. Like, what are they going to do with Matthew Stafford? Like, remember, they tried to trade him. They tried to give him away because they didn't want to enter into that contract. They were worried about his elbow, okay? He comes back from the elbow. He misses 2 games. Their team's not very good when he does. So how are they going to see? This is the hardest one. He's really good, but can he stay healthy, which they're worried about, right? And do we extend him more because they have huge cap debt on him now? Where are we going? And it ain't I hate to break the news to you, Femi. It ain't Stetson Bennett going to be the next starter there.
No, he's returned to the team now. Stetson Bennett, obviously wishing him well, but that's not the course of action that they're going to go toward. I mean, who knows? Maybe they had been sniffing around on some of these quarterbacks in this past draft. I know that they were looking to eye Brock Bowers in that whole video that's now come out with McVay talking with I believe it was with Joe Douglas or so, or with Kevin O'Connell rather, talking about trying to potentially move all the way up into that number 10 spot. But that's neither here nor there. It didn't happen, and the Rams ended up taking Jared Verse with their pick. But that does it for this edition of the GM Shuffle podcast. We taped a short one here on this Monday to get you that Trevor Lawrence news and everything that's happened over the course of this weekend. We did record a really cool interview with Phil Simms, Super Bowl 21 MVP. Phil Simms now of Sims Complete on the YouTube page. He's got a YouTube channel. He's in the content space, Michael. So we are really excited to share this interview with our audience here. I'm sure you guys will love it. And we'll be back later on this week on the GM Shuffle. Subscribe, rate, and review as always. And we'll see you guys then.
You're listening to the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN. Here is Femi Abebefe.
Welcome to another edition of the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN. I'm your host, Femi Abebefe. As always, make sure to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. Our producer, Elliot Bowman, with us on the ones and twos. And Michael, we're continuing our series of having cool people, knowledgeable people talk about the sport that we know and love, and that is football. And our guest today, this is a real treat for us here. I know I say that a lot, but this one I'm really excited for this. Super Bowl 21 MVP. He's a member of the New York Giants Ring of Honor, played 15 years in the National Football League. You can find him on Twitter at Phil Simms Quarterback, and check out his YouTube page, Sims Complete, with his son Matt Simms, with the breaking down all things football and all things quarterback play. It's the one and only Phil Simms. How we doing today? You're now in the podcast space. You're in the YouTube space. What's been going on?
Oh, podcasts. I'm loving it, man. I'm just can let it go and talk and not be, we don't have to go to commercials. And that introduction, that is the first time ever in my life somebody said cool about me. Because I am definitely not cool, and I don't want to be cool. I don't want to be hip. I'm who I am right now. I'm 68, and here we go.
Well, I think you're pretty cool, because when I used to do the Inside the NFL with Phil, we would spend Wednesday. He'd get there bright and early, and he and I would sit there. We would solve all the world problems around the table, talk football all Wednesday morning. We would tape the show. We'd have too much information to do on the show to really tape it. And we would talk football and Parcells stories, which to me, this could be 2 hours of just Bill Parcells stories. And all of them would be, you're taking notes on them. Just trust me on that. Right, Phil? I mean, I got to ask you this. Is there not a moment in your daily life that there's something doesn't trigger a memory of he told you when you were playing for him?
Oh, every day. 10 times a day. And I can never talk about him enough, Mike. I mean, when people here's what a couple things. One, you and I, we would solve all the problems down there before we did the show. And as Al Davis said to me one time as I was doing something, he goes, "Well, I listened to you on Sundays, and you got all the effing answers." And I just go, "Okay, that wasn't a very good imitation. I used to be doing well." But yeah, I mean,
you got
Bill,
all the answers,
I get
young
really
man.
irritated sometimes on shows, podcasts, or whatever. Well, Bill Parcells couldn't coach in today's game. And I go, that is idiotic and stupid to say. He could coach in any era. The guy could, he had an unbelievable way. Of course, let me say this first. He was so tough and hard. That was all real, and it's even greater than people think. And just to be funny, when he said he's retiring from the Giants after 8 years, I had to come home and look at my birth certificate to see if my first name began with a P or an F, because for 8 years I was effing Sims, and I mean it was real too. But he just had a way of making players gravitate towards him, and he knew who to send a message through to the team. All those things were great, and it wasn't what everybody thinks too. Like I walked down the locker room once. This is the last one I'll say real quick. Before the 84 season, my career's on the line, his career's on the line, and I'm walking out, and he sees me, goes, "Hey, Sims, if you don't throw at least 2 interceptions a day, you're not taking enough chances. You got to be aggressive." And everybody goes,
Wow.
"Well, that put pressure on you." No, it was his way of taking pressure off of you on game day. He was awesome at that. He didn't get bent out of shape if we had a turnover. Oh, my God, a turnover. Now if you have a turnover, we got to, have a discussion. Is he going to start next week or whatever? But, he was awesome in many ways, Mike, and you're right. I talk about him all the time.
It's funny when you sit there and you watch that. And I never really directly worked for him, but I feel like I lived through him. And when I talk to him on the phone and we talk about it, and he gives me that, let me tell you something here, kid. You just know you're going to learn something, right? Like, and all
Absolutely.
this nonsense that he's older and he's on top of the game. Trust me. And I don't think there's a guy who has a better big picture view of football than he does. Like, somebody might know how to teach the linebacker how to take on a 2-gap in a hole, but nobody could tell you how to play the game to win the game on that day. I can still remember being at the Niners in '86, and we played you on Monday night. We were up 17-0 on you. And you just came out and steamrolled the shit out of us in the second half. And then you beat us 49-3. And it was over. Like it was like at that point, Walsh said, "Wait a minute, we got to figure out what we're doing here."
Yeah, he did. Bill Walsh might have said that after the game, if I remember. He goes, "They're too big and too strong for us," or something like that. And I said, "Well, I don't know about that. I took a beating I got beat in that 49-3 game." But yeah, he really does. Has a great look. Ask some of the assistant coaches about Bill Parcells. They'd always tell me, "Hey guys, don't worry. He's harder on us than he is on you guys."
Yeah.
And I talked to one assistant coach. I won't say his name, and he says, "Look, he was the biggest whatever and went through I've ever worked for." And then there's a little pause. He goes, "But if that phone rings and he's got a job and he wants me to come, I'm going." And I go, "Well, what is that?" He goes, "Because he would set the table for all the coaches. He would take care of the team and get everybody in line. And now we got him in a position where the assistants could coach their guys." And that was, I'm sure in coaching, that is a huge thing to do, to take care of that for the assistants. Now they can go out and teach and do their thing and get the best out of the players.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting way, because we've had this conversation all throughout, a couple of years now, Michael, where we've talked about teams now sort of hire the subcontractor head coach. They want, hey, this is a great play caller. Let's hire him to call plays, and we'll pair him with a veteran defensive coordinator or somebody that we can just push off to the side. It feels like that's just such the wrong way to go about this. I know it's worked maybe to an extent with Sean McVay with the Rams and all that stuff. We had Wade Phillips as DC, and he was the head coach, but it feels like there's an absence of having the head coach that actually oversees everything and kind of sets the table like Parcells did for you guys with the Giants.
Yeah, it's just not as prevalent in the NFL now as it was back when I played. Not that that's good. Well, I looked at it, and Bill was great at seeing like Mike said, the big plan, what we were going to do. I'll never forget, we were going to play Washington one year. Second time that year we were playing them. Tom Coughlin was the wide receiver coach. Everybody was hurt, this and that, and we were going to have to throw the ball. And he went in. The coaches had all their plays up on the board. He walked in and goes, taking that out and that out. And time he got done, we literally had like 8 passes for the whole game. And we scored like 42 points.
Wow.
And we're running across the field after the game, and Tom Coughlin looks at me. I'm going to clean it up. He goes, he's a genius. He's a gosh dang genius. And it was hilarious. But he just knew in every game, he would preach to us on Wednesdays, here's what we got to do. This is it. And it was, the state of address. And man, it was amazing how many times we won those games because of his thought process, the position he put us in, and of course, really terrific game plans.
Yeah, and no one teaches this anymore. I mean, I think this is a lost art in our sport. And, because if you look at guys who are getting head coaching jobs now, their resumes are so small, whereas the Walshes, the Parcells, the Belichicks, those guys had long trajectories of learning from other head coaches. So it's almost like a lost art. But I want to focus on the quarterbacks in the draft. And I know you spent a lot of time and you work really hard at scouting them. Let's start with Caleb, right? So you're in Chicago, going to be an upgrade. But how is this going to function when you have 3 receivers, not a very good offensive line, and all of a sudden you got a running back who's more of a nickel back than a pure back? Are they going to be an 11 team? How does this work to develop in a quarterback? And you've been in these shoes before because you've seen that as you went with Ray Perkins when you first started.
Right. Well, what are they going to do as far as what you said, Mike? I really don't have a great feel for it or whatever. I think they've done a good job of kind of rebuilding the team a little bit and now get it back on the right track. I like what they've done. Caleb Williams, he was clearly my number 1 quarterback. Maybe not as big as I used to make it because Jaden Daniels, I was a huge fan of his, and we'll get into that if we have time or whatever. But Caleb Williams, the one thing about him they didn't have, Justin Fields was a big play guy. Oh, big run, big throw. But, when you watch him, you never saw the methodical, let's march it down the field, a throw in the flat, an in cut, a screen, couple runs, and just that way. It just wasn't, it was all about just a big moment always with them. And I think Caleb Williams can be that kind of quarterback. I do. We show so many plays of him, and I'm sure you did. You talk about it, all the movement, all the throws, the great throws on the run. He has a good arm, but when given the pocket and a decent scheme that actually let him go 1 to 2 to 3, I wasn't crazy about their offense at all at USC, but I thought he did really well. That's kind of how I judged him. He's a big guy. He plays big. He manhandles the football. He throws perfect spirals all the time, which is a big deal in Chicago. And I think he's a natural thrower. I always say this. He was put on earth to throw something. Mm-hmm. I don't care what it is, the javelin and track, baseball, football. And I think he's going to have a good career if I had to guess right or wrong.
Yeah, a lot of expectations.
Well, yeah, no question. Let's talk about Jaden Daniels. Look, if Caleb hangs on to the football, I think that's going to be the key for him in terms of the pocket and the pressure. But I'm with you, Phil. I thought the offense wasn't exactly tailored to him. But Jaden Daniels, really, his running ability and his ability to make a play with his feet was spectacular. What do you think he brings to Washington and Cliff Kingsbury's offense? And we'll finish this on the other break, so don't worry about it.
Yeah, listen, he's a natural. And, I heard my son say this morning on TV, he goes, hey, look, the pocket can be all around him. He's like C.J. Stroud. He has one of the most compact throwing motions I've seen. And that really is a great thing to have in the NFL where, how the pressure closes in quick. And so his throwing got markedly better every year in college. I started watching him as a freshman at Arizona State, and I go, man, this guy is skinny as hell, but damn, can he play? And then I met him after he won the Heisman Trophy at CBS, and everybody's going up and grabbing him and go, you got to put on some weight. And I went up there and said, has everybody said you need to put on weight? And he goes, yeah. I said, listen, don't listen to him. Be who you are. He's a lot bigger when you see him and talk to him in person than it translates on the field sometimes, or what you see. And he doesn't have big shoulders, but he's got legs. He's already put on weight. I just saw him being interviewed this morning. I went, wow, he's starting to get jacked a little bit.
You're listening to the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN. Here is Femi Abebefe.
We're hanging out with Super Bowl 21 MVP Phil Simms here on the GM Shuffle. And Phil, as we were heading to break, you were breaking down Jaden Daniels, the quarterback for the Washington Commanders. I mean, you outlined it pretty well. Like, he comes from a really good pro offense. He had these receivers, but what he did at LSU was historic, even surpassed some of Joe Burrow's numbers during his Heisman Trophy season.
Yeah, listen, he was terrific. And I think I was saying, I'll make it quick. Many things I loved about him: running, finding the next guy to throw to, feeling the pocket, knowing when to run straight through the one gap he sees if he feels a little pressure. Very accurate throwing the football, and a stronger arm. And I think people don't realize how well he can throw it. But everything he did at LSU is going to translate, I think, quickly to the NFL. I mean, he's been taught really well. And people go back and go, well, his junior year, this and that. I thought his junior year, for what they were asking him to do, because I loved LSU, Alabama. I watched those games every Saturday. I thought he was really good, and it didn't surprise me to see what he did at LSU. So, I don't worry about his weight. With NFL quarterbacks, you got to be who you are. He's young, and I think we all can probably say, I know I can, as you age, the weight comes on. I don't care if you wanted to or not. So he's gonna grow into a man that can handle the NFL, and I think he's got a really, really bright future.
Yeah, no, I got that 300-pound man lives inside of me every day. Hey, Phil, so I love the story that you used to tell about when Walsh went to go work you out. And I remember that story really well, because Walsh fell in love with your footwork and your athleticism, which I think is what Sean Payton has fallen in love with Bo Nix. Talk about that.
Well, the Walsh thing, everybody that came into where I had like 20 workouts or maybe more at Morehead State when I was coming out for head coaches and whatever. And everyone wanted to see the same, let it go. So, hell, okay, that's my forte. I'll throw this damn thing as hard as you want. And so Walsh comes in and I'm throwing rockets, or at least I thought I was. And he goes, stop. So what are you doing? And I go, I don't know. Isn't this what you want to see? He goes, no. I want you to be pretty, be graceful, and all this. I go, okay. So I started dialing it back and throwing with the middle. He goes, more. And all of a sudden I threw one. He goes, oh, that's beautiful. And I'd never been around anybody like that. And I'll never forget those stories and the things he said to me. Man, it was awesome. I mean, I loved him, and I was really hoping I would go there. Sam Weiss would call me every night. What do you hear from other teams? And I would tell them, hey, the Giants are going to draft me in the first round. No, I don't think we are. We've checked with them. We're going to, whatever. It didn't work out. But what was the question? So that was the Bill Walsh. And some of the things.
Yeah, so Bo Nix, which is what I think to me is what Sean is from that school. He sees the athleticism in Bo Nix, and the footwork tied to the arm is what I think Walsh saw with you.
I always love that when people say, well, somebody's got to work on their footwork. And I was with a college quarterback yesterday, and I was showing him footwork. This is what it means to get your feet in position and get some pump and know how to leverage your feet. If you don't turn when you use your upper body, if you don't turn it into that right foot, if you do, Tom Brady. I mean, just go through all the great throwers, Brett Favre, Aaron Rodgers, Dan Marino, all of them did the same things. They had the same golf swing. That's why they were really, really good. And so, that's what I think of when I say footwork, and be able to have a little pop when you move around. And, look, I teach a lot of quarterbacks now. I love doing it. And I always say this, I get a little frustrated because I go, damn, if I'd have known this stuff when I was playing, it would have changed my life. Yeah. But I didn't. And, but I try to put it to other kids, and when they do it right, I go, not only does the footwork make you throw more accurately, and throw with more power, but it's unlimited what you can do throwing after that. You can throw 300. I've had college kids, big timers, come in and throw 300 passes in a workout. I know that sounds, I'm telling the truth. And when it's over, nothing. Arm fresh as a daisy. In fact, I would leave the field and talk to people, and I look out there and damn, they were still throwing and having fun. And so that footwork, Mike, and it's a real thing, but I want people to start what does it mean? Well, so-and-so's got to work on his footwork. Well, what the hell does that mean? I don't know. Tell me something, what's right or wrong. And there were some in the draft that their footwork would have been a big problem for me.
Well, and so oh, sorry, Mike.
Go ahead, Femi.
I was going to say,
go ahead.
I was going to say, does Bo Nix check those boxes? Because I think that's the interesting part about this is that a lot of people were surprised that Nix went 12th, but as Michael always says, the great Bill Walsh quote, it's not where you pick them, it's how they play. What do you think of Bo Nix and this Denver offense and the footwork and all the things that he can do in Sean Payton's system?
Well, listen, I liked him a lot. I did. I didn't understand, and Bo Nix. Hell, he was like nobody even talked about him. But a good decision maker. I think the thing that got over, he doesn't have a strong arm. Well, I just saw power throws in every single game I watched, and more than one. Can throw off balance, good reader. In other words, very good decision maker. And he could dissect 1, 2, 3 probably faster than anybody in the draft. Now, I know they threw a lot of short passes, but there was a lot to like. His dad's a coach. I got to tell you the truth. I love that. It tells me something. The dad's been in his ear for a long time, and you can kind of see it. Very mature, and I thought he was a perfect fit for Denver. Before the draft, way before, all the way through, I actually said, man, Sean Payton, this could be a bigger Drew Brees. I hate to always bring that in, but I think there are certain traits they both had. Great decision makers, going to be smart, all that. So it's going to be interesting. I can't wait to see my first look at him in preseason football just to see how his arm and some of his physical abilities look like in an NFL game.
And, what you said is so true. Like there's certain throws that require power throws. But what Walsh was trying to get you to do is to not have every throw be a power throw, to give the receivers a chance to not split their fingers in half, like what Boomer used to do to Eddie Brown, And so I think that's what I think that's what I think Sean saw. And I think J.J. McCarthy has a little bit of that too, is when we talk about footwork, we're talking about this is why Walsh was so obsessed with boxers. He wanted boxers punch with their feet. And he wanted the quarterback to throw the ball with his feet. Like, I'm sure you've been to Kansas City. Mahomes, how many throws does Kansas City throw with Mahomes in practice? He takes most of all the reps, doesn't he?
Yeah. Mahomes is another guy. He could throw for 4 straight days and not even fatigue. He's been a thrower his whole life. He's trained that way. And, Mahomes, I got to tell you, last year, one of his problems, I thought, well, there's a couple. One, he was always looking kind of for the big play when he shouldn't have. And, all the drops, I looked at all the drops and I went, man, whoever's grading these drops, he's the toughest damn grader in history. I hope he never grades me on anything. But he was throwing the ball so hard at times. And then about the last, let's say 5 or 6 games after the debacle against the Raiders and the Bengals, they settled in and he literally changed on the fly. He became a more rhythm thrower. He read the plays out. He quit looking for the big throw and just played quarterback. And he was awesome at it. His run at the end of the season and the playoff games, it was tremendous. It really was. And I think it'll probably carry over into this year. But yeah, Mike, his throwing motion is so good. He's so physically gifted that he never gets tired of throwing. His arm never hurts. And so they can take him out there and work him to death. And they know the next day he's going to be just as good.
Well, I want to ask you this because you mentioned how people don't really have an explanation when you ask, all right, what do you mean by saying they need to improve on their footwork? Do you think that, because this quarterback class, we saw 6 guys go in the first 12 picks. I think back to that 2021 class where we had 5 of those guys. Only one of them, Trevor Lawrence, is still with the team that drafted them. Are more quarterbacks, I guess, misevaluated throughout the process, or are more teams just not being able to develop these guys correctly and more guys are maybe ruined on a kind of other different path there?
Well, there's so many things when we talk about that. In other words, does the guy we're talking about have a couple traits that give him a chance to be a franchise quarterback? Is it size, mobility, accuracy, arm strength? We got to have something or a couple of those for sure to think we have a chance. And then so much is predicated on the offense. Does it fit you? Is the team around you good enough to let you show your talent and we don't over criticize or whatever sometimes? All that is part of trying to be a franchise quarterback. And then I think that one thing we never talk about, and I know you and Mike, I hope you agree. Do you really, really, truly love football? I mean, you're obsessed with it. And it's your life. And I hate to say it this way, but it's life and death. And you know it. And are you just willing to pay all those prices to do it? And I think that always shows through. I think sometimes I can judge that a little. And we always find out after a couple years in the NFL, are you the man? Can you handle all this? And it's going to be rough as hell. It never goes great. As Terry Bradshaw, I'd say this all the time. He says, you're a quarterback in the NFL. You got to go to hell before you can go to heaven. And it's right. Kind of true.
That's a great.
So there are a lot of guys this year. Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
And it's what we talk about here is you got to learn how to be. You're no longer an amateur. You're a professional. And so you got to take that step from being an amateur to being because it's your life. It's your life. It was your life. It's Tom Brady's life, who just got honored last week, so yeah. But I don't think people understand that. And I appreciate you saying that, because I keep saying it all the time, how to do that. And that's why it's so good to have you on the pod, because I think you get it. And it's more than just throwing the ball. It's more than it's how much prep time. Are you a pro? Is this your life? Are you willing to live and die for this? And I think that's what separates it.
I do too. And listen, if you don't see improvements physically, mentally, whatever, from year to year, then you might not have the guy. And I really judge these first-year quarterbacks for the second year very tough to see if I see those improvements to make them a better player.
Yeah. Well,
no question.
Phil, do you have time to hang out with us for about 5 more minutes after this break here? Because I do want to ask you about some guys that could potentially make those next steps here. I think it's a really interesting conversation. Also, maybe we'll ask you about Dak Prescott and Tua Tagovailoa, who are expected to get some big deals at some point this offseason. Yeah, if you want to make some headlines, have a comment about Dak Prescott. We'll break it all down. We're going to take a quick break here. One last break here on the GM Shuffle podcast. Super Bowl 21 MVP Phil Simms hanging out with us here on the GM Shuffle. Don't go away. For our DraftKings Network audience, we'll say so long to you guys, but for our podcast audience, stick with us here on the other side. We're hanging out with Phil Simms here on the GM Shuffle.
You're listening to the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN. Here is Femi Abebefe.
Conversation's too good. We had to keep Phil Simms around for a third segment here on the GM Shuffle podcast. And we were talking about the quarterbacks making the next step here. And I think last year we saw it was CJ Stroud came onto the scene, Brock Purdy, Jordan Love. Those guys kind of announced themselves as upper echelon quarterbacks. How do those guys improve heading into 2024? And also, who else could join maybe this conversation that isn't really seen as that kind of guy right now, but by the end of the regular season, we're talking about them being, maybe this is one of those 10 best guys in the world at the position?
Well, I don't have them all in my head probably, but I'll just go with the ones you said. Jordan Love, one thing he did last year, it was great. He sat on the bench, I think, for 3 years. I think he needed it because I judged him pretty hard coming out. I said, he is so inconsistent throwing the football. That doesn't work in the NFL. In the NFL, you got to hit all the routine throws, then you got to make a couple special ones every game. And, you guys have said it probably 1,000 times. He finally got a feel for the game by playing every week and preparing. And all of a sudden, he became damn Aaron Rodgers back there throwing the ball down the field. It was like I looked at him a few games and went, what is going on? Not only that, I thought they designed, Matt LaFleur designed the offense to really fit his physical abilities, which I always think is huge. And Brock Purdy, he just got to continue to get better physically and be a little more of a dynamic thrower. And, he makes a lot of tough throws, but they scheme him up where he could even do more. So those are a couple, you brought him up. Trevor Lawrence got all the skill you ever want. And now it's time to get the team behind you. And I've kind of done this already, talked about it a few times with some friends of mine. And I just said, hey, look, there comes a time where you got to be that guy. And it's not only just about you taking care of your job, you got to influence the rest of the team. I mean, the quarterback is the second most powerful guy on the team. I mean, the head coach and then the quarterback who can influence not only his players, his offense, but the defense too. And real quick, Bill Parcells, one day at practice, the O-line's having a bad practice. He stops it and he is crushing them. It was like, and I'm standing behind him going, get him, Bill. Get him. This is great. And then when he's done doing it, he turns around and he goes, Sims, and it's your fault. And I just went, what? And he goes, you used to be their leader, but now you're their buddy. You buy them gifts. You take them to dinner. How's that working out for you, huh? How's it working out? And whatever, he did the whole thing. And the game practice is over. I'm driving home, and I just remember going, gosh, damn, he's right. Man, they used to kind of fear me a little. They were afraid to let their guy hit me because they knew I was going to pull him out and say it. And I really think that's an important part of being a quarterback. You don't have to be loud and sometimes like I was. There's just a way to do it. You got to be like the head coach. You got to understand how to treat every guy and who they are. And that's how you affect your football team. So I see Trevor Lawrence like that a little. I heard you guys say Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott had his best year ever last year throwing the ball. Now, you talking about improving. He just keeps getting a little better every year of throwing the football. And he made the mistake in the playoff game when they were the better team than Green Bay. They should have won that game 9 out of 10. And he took chances early, and they could never overcome it. You know, when you play in those type of games, get a feel for the game. Let it come to you a little. And he was a little too, I thought, aggressive, and they could never catch up because of that. So,
you know, I think Baltimore got desperate in the playoffs, not running the ball. And I thought Dallas, when they got behind, how easy it was for Green Bay to score, all of a sudden thought they were in a track meet when they should have slowed the game down. And again, that goes back to the Parcells, how to know how to play the game. And I think you're right. And all of a sudden that game got away from Dallas. And I think, to me, you know, when we talk about Dak, I think I'd love to hear you on this, is we talk about game managers, which is bullshit, right? Every quarterback needs the right system around them. It's not a game manager. It's about how do you highlight the player's skill set.
No doubt. I mean, you know, I think when you talk about quarterbacks in the game, listen, you always want to feel and know the situations. You know, if I'm on a team and we're up 10 or 2 touchdowns and whatever, it's the fourth quarter. Well, they're going to be wide open before I throw it to them, and just to play it that way. So, and that was what, you know, we kind of talked about it with Dak. He made that great mistake of trying to be too aggressive early, let the game settle in, and then the better team's going to, you know, win those type of games if you give them time. But you got to see the grand scheme of it as a quarterback, just like the head coach. And you're right. Bill Parcells was awesome at that and understood it, and he helped us all do it better because it was a constant teaching for him. You know, he had a new lesson to teach you every damn day, and it was awesome. So,
if the Miami,
I don't know if I answered your question, Mike. I kind of forgot the question as I got
talking.
talking.
No, you did.
Let me say this. I heard y'all talking about the cap and all that. And here would be my thing. I know everybody that comes up for a new contract of quarterbacks, I don't care how much money they make. I'm jealous now. It took me a long time. I was never jealous, but I got to admit I'm jealous now because it's lifetime money, even no matter what happens in the world. But somebody sooner or later is going to break this. And they're going to take a franchise quarterback and just go, we're not going to do that. And I don't know when it's going to happen, but sooner or later, it probably has to, because too many quarterbacks are eating too much of the cap.
It happened with Cousins, and it happened with Cousins, and that's where Dak eats 23% of the cap. Watson eats 25% of the cap. It's not how much they make per year, Phil. It's how much they eat of the cap. Jalen Hurts going into the season is only going to eat 6.7% of the cap. Daniel Jones eats. He's the 5th highest ranked eater of the cap of any quarterback in the league. And he's the only quarterback in the history of the NFL that has a $100 million contract that's never thrown for 3,500 yards or has thrown for 25 touchdowns. So it goes back to evaluating the player. It's not how much per year you pay them. It's how you structure the deal and then gives you the ability to have other alternatives. Because if the Rams lose Matthew Stafford and they don't have any depth on their team, they can't win. And so that's really what it comes down to. I think, look, they're going to all get paid. Tua's going to get paid. The market is the market. You can't chase it. But you got to have the ability to work the contract out that helps the team.
Well, you know what? See, that's something the player can't overcome, and that's above them. And you said it right. Just like the quarterback, you manage the game, the coach does it, and the front office has got to manage the team. As far as all they go, right. Spending this money and these contracts is hell. It's like that's how we win or lose. And
right.
So I understand.
You can't be like me going in a donut shop wanting to eat all the donuts. You got to pick your donut. You can't have them all, right? Like I'll eat all 12 of them, and so you got to be careful. And I think to me, that's where it is. I really do. But, look, we could talk all day. Phil, we appreciate you being here. I think one of the best books that I've ever read, Phil, I don't think I've ever told you this, but Tom Crean said to me about 2 months ago, you got to read Phil Sims's book. It's the best football book. And it was such a great read. I think you wrote it. You might have still been playing. I forget the year it came out, but it was so Parcellian through Sims that it was an incredible read, and I urge everybody to read it. It really was so good.
Well, that's nice of you to say, Mike. I'm going to write another book soon. It's going to be a little more widespread than that. I think I am. I don't know. As I was asking my wife, should I write a book one day? And she said, well, do I tell the truth? Because I don't know if people are ready for the truth and all the things that come out if you do that. So, but whatever.
Well,
hey,
look, that's the beautiful thing about the world you're in now with YouTube and Instagram, all that. Tell the truth. People want the truth. What the networks can't figure out is they don't understand how to deliver the truth. They just want to keep going on, and so I think that's what you're going to be great at doing this, where you can speak your mind and you don't need somebody to tell you what to think. You'll think it.
Yeah, I guess so. One thing everybody thinks I retired or something because I'm not at CBS anymore. When I retire? I'll retire when I can't remember anybody's name and can't talk. I mean, I love doing what I do. I know you guys love it, and I want to just keep doing it. And, I feel like this will be the last thing real quick. I love doing this for many reasons. I love football. I love what it means and how hard it is and all that, but I also want to tell the truth. And I want to tell the truth for the players and coaches, because fans only know what they read, what they hear, whatever, and what people, so I think it's up to, I always say that's the first thing I think of, to make sure I tell the truth about the players and coaches, to at least give the fans something and maybe look at it differently and be truthful to them. So that's what I love. And I'm just glad I get a chance to do it with a lot of people. So thank you guys for having me on.
Yeah, that's really well said.
Thank you, Phil. We appreciate it.
Yes, thank you to Phil Simms. That's excellent stuff. We hope everyone enjoyed this episode of the GM Shuffle. Once again, Phil Simms, 15-year NFL quarterback, Super Bowl 21 MVP, member of the Giants, Ring of Honor. You can find him at Phil Simms QB on Twitter, and then of course the Simms Complete YouTube page with his son Matt Simms breaking down quarterbacks and all things football. Phil, we appreciate the time as always. Thank you for the kind words on your end, and we love the work that you've been doing with your son Matt and everything you're going to be doing on in the future. Be well until then, and that does it for this edition of the podcast. Thank you to our producer Elliot Bowman with us on the ones and twos. For Michael Lombardi, for Phil Simms, I'm Femi Abebefe saying so long. We'll see you guys later on this week. This is the GM Shuffle.